Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever it is that you are and wherever you may be. Thank you very much for making us a part of your day. I am Brad Franklin, creative content writer here in Chesterfield. I'm very glad to tell you that Chesterfield Behind the Mic is on the air once again. Obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube, it's a little bit different because we're not doing the video piece of this for this one. We're doing something a little bit different with some of these podcasts where we're going to kind of have them be audio driven, and then you'll get some visual components as you watch it on YouTube. To those of you who are listening in a podcast app, nothing changed for you, and I'm very sorry that you get no new goodies today. We are here. It's election season, and we're going to have Missy Vera, who is the General Registrar and Director of Elections for Chesterfield County on the show. Missy, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. Obviously, it's a busy time. I know that you are extremely busy, so I very much appreciate you taking some time for us to talk through elections and that kind of stuff today. I guess before we get started, I like to do this sometimes where I sort of talk to people about their background and how it is that they came to be sitting in the chair across from me today. And obviously, with it being election season and with it being such a busy time, you're probably wondering to yourself sometimes how you got here. But
Absolutely.
I am curious, like, how is it that you kind of came to be involved in this, and how's it gone so far since you've been named registrar?
It's been quite the exciting journey. So we'll go back to 2016. I had a life-changing event. I left my retail job of 15 years.
Oh, wow.
And decided to be home, be a mom, be a wife. Prior to that, I had known Constance Tyler, the former registrar.
Right.
She actually worked for me at my retail job. So we kind of reversed roles. So I was able to spend a holiday, which I hadn't been able to do being in the retail world. I was able to be home. After that, I reached out to Constance and asked her if she had any openings in the registrar's office, which she did. So I started in staging part-time.
Okay.
And I actually fell in love with it.
Oh, fun.
So I found the whole process fascinating.
Right.
And I just kept wanting to learn more and more. And Constance was so gracious to take me under her wing and teach me everything that she knows. But she's been in the business 25 plus years.
Right.
So there is no way she could teach me everything. So I have a great team. And again, I just find everything fascinating about the process.
I can imagine too, as your first general, like, this is an eye-opening experience to have it be all at once. Has it been, before we get into the nuts and bolts of the stuff people need to know going into it, I'm just curious, has it been eye-opening for you? Has it been what you expected it to be? How's it been so far?
It's been an ever-changing process with legislation. From election to election is not the same.
Right.
So you think you have processes and procedures in place for your staff, but all that changes when the legislation changes.
Right.
And especially for our officers of election who work one election, come the next election, they have to relearn the process, which can be challenging.
Right.
But everybody is so great that they come to training and they learn everything they need to for that election.
Right. Now, I'm curious in terms of getting into the thick of it now, as we every day you're closer to the actual election day. But I know for in modern times, the job of registrar, the job of election officials, it's never just about election day anymore, because so much happens before election day. What are some of the challenges that you guys have seen so far as early voting has begun?
So far as early voting has begun, we don't have any challenges. Everything has been going smoothly. On average, we have about 300 coming through our door at the registrar's office. So since beginning September 23rd, when it opened, we have had maybe 4,000 voters. And the process is going smoothly.
Great. And is that, you think that's as much a function of, because right now you just have the one location, and I can imagine that as more locations sort of come online and and especially because some legislation we're going to talk about in just a minute, obviously, it becomes more complex the more, as opposed to like when you can only have people come to one location. I can imagine that that's probably the easiest way to do it. In terms of sort of some of the things that voters are going to be mindful of going into it. I know redistricting was a piece going into this election. How has that sort of changed for people, and what does it mean for them as election day draws closer?
Yeah, so as election day draws closer, we will open the 6th satellite location the additional 5 satellite locations will be opened October 24th.
Right.
With redistricting, I would just advise everybody to either call our office or go onto the citizen portal, the Department of Elections website, to find out their polling place.
Right.
They will see something different when they go to vote in an early voting location.
Right.
We have what's called a ballot on demand. And that is due to legislation being passed that we now have to report results by precinct.
Okay.
So all the central absentee precinct, the by mail that we receive has to be reported by precinct.
Right.
Therefore, every precinct, every location in the county has a specific ballot.
Right.
So when you go to vote, we will have 172 different ballot styles. That's including regular and federal only. So ballot on demand will just decrease the challenge of rifling through a file box to get a pre-printed ballot specific to that precinct, specific to that voter.
Right.
So they will get checked in normally.
Right.
And then when they go to the ballot officer will actually print a ballot specific for that person.
Okay.
And then they can check on the ballot. We'll have the precinct name and the precinct number. And then they're able to go to the voting booth and mark their ballot.
Right.
So I would definitely advise people prior to going in to do some research and find out which polling place they are assigned to.
Right. Because and those ballot differences, I would imagine, do create some complexity for folks who work the election, because that's like you mentioned earlier, legislation that comes down from the state or various other, whether it's federal, whoever, right? That changes what you guys have to do, and you don't have a choice.
Correct.
So you're saying is in this sort of new way, anybody who comes to vote is going to get a ballot specific to their voting location, regardless of whether they vote early or they vote on election day.
Right. Voting early, it will be that ballot on demand. Right. Election day will be different because each precinct will have its own ballot.
Right. Now, I know for folks who are listening to this, we're recording this a little bit before, but the deadline for registration, I believe, was October 17th. So that will have been a couple of days before folks actually get this. But I want to talk a little bit about same-day registration, because that kind of changes a little bit too, because it's technically true you can register up until and on election day. The difference, though, is that if you do that, there are some differences in terms of the process for those folks who do that, especially because of the location they vote. Tell me a little bit about what people need to know about same-day registration.
So anybody can register to vote same day at any location, satellite location, or even on election day.
Right.
However, election day, if they go to vote, they must be at the precinct in which they would be registered to vote.
Right.
A person who will register to vote can register, mark a ballot, but the ballot will be considered a provisional ballot. And that's just so that we could do some research on our end to ensure that it is a valid ballot to be cast. Right.
Now, in terms of, I guess, the bigger picture as election officials, typically in the past, we think of the big event, the Super Bowl of elections, right, is election day. But obviously now there are just so many different ways for people to vote. Let's walk through sort of what those options are for folks as November draws closer. Obviously, your early voting began in your office last month. You mentioned the satellite office is open. Take me through sort of what I know that there are hours and dates, and there's some Saturdays and Sundays. So let's just put it all in one place for folks in terms of what are the opportunities for them to vote.
Absolutely. So we will continue voting at the registrar's office, and we're open Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5. The satellite locations will open October 24th. The satellite locations, which are the 5 libraries across the county, some 5 libraries across the county, they will be open from 10 to 7.
Okay.
And then we will all be open each Saturday, October 29 and November 5th from 8:30 to 5.
Okay.
We will also be open on October 30th, which is a Sunday.
Right.
We'll be open from noon to 4 only at the registrar's office. So people have that opportunity to go and cast their ballot on that Sunday,
Gotcha.
which is a great opportunity.
And for those who may not be aware, because while those of us who are sort of steeped in this are probably aware, what do folks need in order to sort of prove their residence, right? What do they need in order to obtain a ballot?
So they'll need to go inside and check in with the poll book officer. There are several valid IDs that a voter can bring in. So they can bring in their driver's license, their passport, a utility bill.
Right.
But they have to be listed in our poll book. If they're not, so October 17th, as mentioned, is the last day to register or update any existing registration. October 18th starts same day registration.
Okay.
So we will have to look up the voter to make sure to see which precinct they would be registered to vote at.
Right.
And then we would be able to issue them that precinct specific ballot.
Gotcha. All right. Last couple of things for you. First off, I'm just curious from a voting election officer sort of point of view, is there a better way to vote? Like if folks come to you and say, well, what's the best way for me to vote? I'm just curious because I can imagine folks listening to this thinking to themselves like, all of a sudden I have all these options. Which one's the best one? I would imagine the easiest one probably is election day. You just go and you do your ballot. But I can also see folks who voted in September thinking, man, I'm so glad I got that thing done. That kind of stuff. Do you get that question often? And if folks ask you, what's your answer?
I do. And it ranges from people's availability. A lot of people still want to go on election day and to cast their ballot in person.
Right.
But I would encourage people to take advantage of that 45-day early voting period.
Right.
So there are not long lines generally. In the 2 weeks before at the library locations, maybe the first couple of days will be long lines for people wanting to cast their ballot. But I would encourage people to take advantage of that 45-day period.
And I know in the press releases we've sent, one of the things we've definitely, kind of reiterated folks is like, just understand that everybody's doing the best they can. If there is a wait, it's, it won't be long, to basically to plan to be patient, essentially. Last one for you. And I think this might be the most important question of the day. If folks vote early in your office, do they still get the sticker? Do they
Absolutely. Absolutely they do, yes.
All right, that's actually not my last question. I was kidding. But my actual last question for you is going into it, are you expecting, because of the numbers of early voters and stuff you've seen, do you feel like you're going to get is it going to kind of like turn the temperature down, so to speak, on how busy election day will be, or do you still kind of expect it to be as busy as maybe some other years?
I don't expect it to be as busy as some other years. We started no excuse absentee voting in 2020 during the pandemic. So we haven't yet had a full cycle. So it's hard to kind of gauge.
Right.
But most people are taking advantage of that 45-day period. So the turnout election day has been getting less and less. But again, we might see people flocking to the polls to vote election day again this year.
Good deal. Well, Missy, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
All right, you can check us out on social media. On Twitter, it's at Chesterfield VA. On Instagram, it's Chesterfield Virginia, all one word. On Facebook, check out our podcast page. Just search Chesterfield Behind the Mic. Make sure to like that page so you can keep up with us as we go forward. Then let me tell you about all the ways you can check out the show. You can obviously watch us on our YouTube channel, Chesterfield.gov/podcast as well. An audio-only version of the show is also available there, as well as on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Overcast, and a whole host of other services. You can also watch the show on WCCT Thursday through Sunday at 7, on the weekends at noon. That's Comcast Channel 98, Verizon Channel 28. And lastly, you can check out Chesterfield.gov/connect with us for a number of ways for you to get in touch with us and us to get in touch with you. My thanks to all the good folks here in communications and media who makes this show possible. I very much appreciate all that they do. And my thanks to you for joining us today. So from all of us here in Chesterfield County, thank you very much for making us a part of your day. We'll see you again real soon. Take good care.